Hello everyone. Today we will see one of the very interesting topics in this chapter, that is task scheduling. So what is scheduling? So a multitasking involves the execution switching among different tasks. So whenever there are more than one tasks that are to be executed in a system, so there is a need to switch between the different tasks. So there should be some mechanism to share the CPU among the different tasks and to decide which process or task has to be executed at a given point of time, right? So something has to be there to decide which task or which process has to be executed and which has to be given the CPU to execute. So the determining which task or process is to be executed at a given point of time is known as scheduling. Okay, so scheduling is to determine which task or process among the available processes has to be executed at any given point of time. So there are some policies called scheduling policies which form the guidelines for determining which task is to be executed and at what time, right? So these policies, the scheduling policies, are implemented in an algorithm and it is run by the kernel as a service. So it will be running as a service. So the kernel service or application which implements the scheduling algorithm is known as the scheduler. Okay, the scheduler is an application or a service which implements the scheduling algorithm. So based on the scheduling algorithm used, the scheduling can be classified into broadly two categories. One is non-preemptive scheduling, the other one is preemptive scheduling. In non-preemptive scheduling, the preemption doesn't occur. Preemption means before completion of a process or a task, if you stop it temporarily, that is called preemption. Okay, so if it doesn't occur, that is called non-preemptive scheduling. In that case, the currently executing task or process is allowed to run until it terminates, or until it is completed it is allowed to run, or it enters the wait state, waiting for an IO or system resource. Until it terminates it will be running, or suppose if it enters an wait state, like it will be waiting for an IO device or some system resource, in that case it will be preempted. Until then it will be allowed to run without deallocating the CPU that is allotted to it. That is called non-preemptive scheduling. In case of preemptive scheduling, the currently executing task or process is preempted. That is, it is stopped temporarily, and another task from the ready queue is selected for execution. Okay, so that means all the tasks, which are in the ready state, they will form a queue. So one of them will be scheduled. Okay, then before it completes or before it goes into wait state, it will be preempted forcefully by the CPU or the scheduler. Okay, it will be preempted forcefully, and other task will be scheduled. So such a kind of scheduling algorithm is known as preemptive scheduling. The process scheduling decision, it may take place whenever there is a state transition to ready state from running state, or to blocked or wait state from running state, or to ready state from blocked or wait state, or when the process goes to completed state. So these are the different state transitions that we have seen, and in all these transitions, scheduling decision may take place. So whenever a process switches to ready state from running state, so when this happens is, see, initially when a process enters the ready queue, once it is scheduled, it goes to running state. From running state, if at all it is preempted, then it will go to ready state. So the type of scheduling in scenario one is preemptive scheduling. Next, when it is in running state, if at all it wants certain IO operation to complete, or it is waiting for a system resource, it will enter blocked or wait state. From blocked or wait state, if that IO operation or the system resource wait is completed, it will go back to the ready state. Now, whenever the higher priority process is there in a blocked or wait state, once it completes that IO operation or it gets that system resource, from blocked or wait state, it enters the ready state. In this case, if at all, if it is a higher priority task than the currently executing task, the scheduler will pick that higher priority task which has just entered the ready state, if the scheduling policy is priority based preemptive scheduling. Okay, so that is what is indicated in the scenario 3. Whenever there is a transition from blocked or wait state to ready state, If at all the task is a process is a higher priority task, that will be scheduled, and the presently executing task will be preempted. Okay. In preemptive or non-preemptive multitasking, the process relinquishes the CPU when it enters the blocked or wait state or the completed state, and the switching of the CPU happens at the state. So once the process is running, irrespective of whether it is preemptive or non-preemptive scheduling, if at all the running process enters the blocked or wait state, it will give up the CPU. Or whenever the process enters the completed state, even then the processor will enter the uh, the process will give up the CPU. So in both of these cases, uh, you know, there will be some scheduling happening, right? I mean, the other process will be scheduled. So the task can be preemptive or non-preemptive. That is what we have seen in the second and the fourth state, fourth the scenarios here. From running state, if it goes to blocked or wait state, or to the completed state, scheduling will occur, and that can be either preemptive or non-preemptive. Even in the fourth case, it can be preemptive or non-preemptive. In some cases, non-preemptive scheduling is also called cooperative scheduling. Okay, so that's what we have. These different uh, situations where scheduling can occur. So there are some factors you need to understand when you select a particular scheduling algorithm or a scheduling technique. So these factors, they are CPU utilization. CPU utilization means the scheduling algorithm should always make the CPU utilization high. The amount of CPU that is utilized, or the time or the percentage of the CPU that is being utilized, that is called CPU utilization. Throughput, it gives an indication of the number of processes executed per unit time. Okay, the throughput for a good scheduler should always be higher. Turnaround time, it's the amount of time taken by a process for completing its execution. Okay, that means it is sum of different times. We will see that with examples. It includes time spent by the process for waiting for the main memory, the time spent in the ready queue, the time spent on completing the IO operations, and the time spent in execution. So all this time included, the moment from which it is admitted into the queue till the moment it completes. That complete thing is called the turnaround time. The turnaround time should be a minimal for good scheduling algorithm. It should be very less. Okay, in scheduling algorithm, for the scheduling algorithm to be good, the turnaround time should be lesser. So these things, turnaround time, waiting time, and all, you might have studied in your operating systems. The waiting time, it is the amount of time spent by a process in the ready queue, waiting to get the CPU. The waiting time should also be minimal for good scheduling algorithm. Then the response time is the time elapsed between the submission of a process and the first response. Okay, once the process is submitted and the first response you get to that time between those two events, that is called the response time. This response time should also be as least as possible for a good scheduling algorithm. So to summarize, a good scheduling algorithm should have a high CPU utilization, minimum turnaround time, maximum throughput, and least response time. Okay, so these are the criteria that you need to consider while selecting a particular scheduling algorithm. Similarly, there are some other terms or queues, which are maintained by the operating system to perform the scheduling. The first queue is the job queue. Job queue involves all the jobs. Jobs in the sense processes. It contains all the processes in the system. Next is ready queue. Ready queue, it is a queue of all the processes which are in the ready state. Okay, it contains all the processes which are ready for execution and waiting for CPU to get their turn. It is empty. If no process is ready for running, then ready queue will be empty. Okay, those processes, if they are there, they will be in the job queue. When it goes to ready state, it will be in the ready queue. Then device queue, it contains the set of processes which are waiting for an IO device. So when it is in running state, if it goes into blocked or wait state, that will be in the device queue, where it will be waiting for an IO device to perform some operation, right? So next, we will move on to one of the kinds of scheduling techniques, that is preemptive scheduling. So this non-preemptive and preemptive scheduling, you have actually studied in your operating system subject in fifth semester, where in different techniques you might have studied, right, like shortest job first, first come first serve, round robin scheduling, right? list completed next, and different scheduling techniques with examples. So again, here we will see with respect to the real-time operating systems, how they are performed. It is very similar. Okay, with examples, we will see them again. So in your syllabus, only preemptive scheduling is mentioned. So non-preemptive scheduling, we are not going to study, but you should know that what a non-preemptive scheduling means. It means that once a process is scheduled, it will not be preempted until it completes or it enters wait state. Okay, but in preemptive scheduling, the scheduler can preempt. That means it can stop temporarily the currently executing task or process, and it can select another task from the ready queue for execution. So every task in the ready queue will get a chance to execute. Okay, so how to determine this? When to preempt a task and which task is to be picked from the ready queue after preempting the current task, that is purely dependent on the scheduling algorithm. Okay, a task which is preempted by the scheduler is moved to the ready queue. Once a task is preempted from running, preempted from running state, it will go to ready state. That's why again it is going back to the ready queue. The act of moving a running process into ready queue by the scheduler without the processors requesting for it is known as preemption. The processors will not request for it, but the scheduler will do it forcefully. So that's why it's called preemption. So we'll move on to the techniques of preemptive scheduling. So there are two approaches basically. One is time-based preemption. The other one is priority-based preemption. In time-based preemption, the preemption occurs with respect to time. I mean, based on time. So maybe we look at how much time is remaining for each process and schedule whichever has the shortest time. Or maybe we will execute particular process for particular slots of time, equal slots of time, like in round robin scheduling. Okay, so those come under time-based preemption. The other one is priority-based preemption. Processors will have different priorities. Based on priority, highest priority task will be executed. Okay, so if presently some task is being executed, and if a higher priority task enters the ready queue in between, then the presently executing task will be preempted. So that is called priority-based preemption. So there are different types of techniques used for preemptive scheduling. One is preemptive shortest job first, SJF, or it is also called shortest remaining time scheduling. The other one is round robin scheduling, and the last one is priority based scheduling. So we are going to study three of this one by one. The first one is preemptive shortest job first, or shortest remaining time scheduling. As the name itself suggests, this will schedule the process which has got shortest time, shortest execution time, okay, or the shortest remaining time to complete the process. So in the shortest job first, the process with the shortest estimated run time is scheduled first, followed by the next shortest process, and so on. The preemptive SJF scheduling algorithm, it will sort the ready queue when a new process enters the ready queue. Okay, it will sort the ready queue when a new process enters the ready queue and checks whether the execution time of the new process is shorter than the remaining of the total estimated time for the currently executing process. So what happens is, once a ready queue is ready with all the processes in it, whichever process has got the shortest remaining time, that will be scheduled. So in between, if at all any process enters the ready queue, the execution time of that process is checked with the remaining time of the all other process which are already in the queue, and also the currently executing process. If at all the execution time of the new process is lesser than the currently executing process, then the currently executing process will be preempted and the new process will be scheduled for execution. Okay, so that's the principle of preemptive shortest job first or shortest remaining time scheduling. So this scheduling, it always compares the execution completion time, that means the remaining time for the new process which has entered the ready queue, with the remaining time for completion of the currently executing process, and it will always schedule the process with shortest remaining time for execution. That's why shortest job first is also known as shortest remaining time scheduling. Okay, so what happens in these particular scheduling techniques is, you'll be given some examples, numerical examples, and you'll be asked to calculate the waiting time and turnaround time. Okay, so one such example is given here. This has also appeared in the exam, and please note that every semester, one of these problems will be asked either on this shortest job first or SRT, or the round robin scheduling or priority based scheduling. Okay, one question is fixed in scheduling examples. So please understand the question given here. The question is three processes with process IDs P1, P2, P3. There are three processes P1, P2, P3 with estimated completion time 10, 5, and 7 milliseconds. That means P1 completion time is 10 milliseconds, P2 completion time is 5 milliseconds, P3 completion time is 7 milliseconds. They enter the ready queue together. All three enter the ready queue together. Okay, at 0 milliseconds. Okay, that together means initially at 0 milliseconds with respect to time. Initially, they will enter the ready queue together. Then a new process P4 with estimated completion time 2 milliseconds enters the ready queue after 2 milliseconds. So another process, which has got completion time of 2 milliseconds, it will enter the ready queue 2 milliseconds after these processes have entered. Okay, so assume all the processes contain only CPU operation and no IO operations are involved. If IO operations are involved, it becomes complex, right? It will go to waiting state and all that you are not going to consider here. They contain only CPU operation. All the time given is only for CPU operation. You are asked to calculate the waiting time and turnaround time for each process and the average waiting time and average turnaround time using SRT scheduling. SRT scheduling is also known as SJF scheduling. Okay, so how to do this? So you need to make different queues, at different instance of time to understand this. Then write the execution sequence of it. Okay, and then you can calculate the waiting time and turnaround time. So first, at 0 milliseconds, we have three processes in the system, P1, P2, and P3. P1 completion or remaining time is 10 milliseconds. P2 remaining time is 5 milliseconds. And P3 remaining time is 7 milliseconds. So you can show it in the ready queue like this. The process IDs are given here, P1, P2, P3. Remaining time of P1 is 10 milliseconds. P2 is 5 milliseconds. P3 is 7 milliseconds. This is the ready queue at 0 milliseconds. Now, the algorithm that we are using is shortest remaining time, right? Or shortest job first. So what happens is it will check the remaining time of all the processes. Which has got the shortest remaining time is the process P2. So that's why P2 will be scheduled, right? P2 will be scheduled. P2 is scheduled. Now, once P2 is scheduled, it will be running. Okay, its execution time is 5 milliseconds. But will it stop here? No. Why? Will it complete till 5 milliseconds? No. Because at 2 milliseconds, another process is entering the queue. At 2 milliseconds, another process is entering the queue. Okay, that process is P4 and its remaining time is 2 milliseconds. Okay, at 2 milliseconds, P2 has completed its 2 milliseconds out of 5. So its remaining time is updated to 3 milliseconds because it has already run for 2 milliseconds. 5 minus 2 is 3. So remaining time of P2 is 3 milliseconds. But there is another process P4 which has entered at 2 milliseconds. Its remaining time or completion time is 2 milliseconds. Now the remaining time of all the processes will be checked, and which has the shortest remaining time now? Now P4 has got the shortest remaining time. So P2, which was scheduled earlier, that will be preempted and P4 will be scheduled. P2 is preempted and P4 is scheduled. So once this P4 is scheduled, it will run for another 2 milliseconds. Okay, it will run for another 2 milliseconds. So 2 plus 2, that is 4 milliseconds. After 4 milliseconds, P4 is completed. After 4 milliseconds, P4 is completed. So which are the processes in the ready queue now? P1, P2, P3. P2 has only 3 milliseconds remaining. Out of 5, 2 milliseconds it has completed. Only 3 milliseconds are remaining now. So P4 has completed now and P2 will be scheduled. So now once this P2 is scheduled, no other processors are entering the queue now. It is not given in the problem statement, right? So at from 4, it will run for 3 more milliseconds. So till 7 milliseconds, P2 will be running. At 7 milliseconds, P2 has completed at 7 milliseconds. 4 plus 3, 7, right? 7 milliseconds. P2 has completed. Now only two processes are remaining in the ready queue. P1 with 10 milliseconds and P3 with 7 milliseconds, right? So here, okay, here which is the shortest one? P2. That's why P2 was scheduled. And here P3 is the shortest one. That's why P3 will be scheduled. P2 has completed and P3 will be scheduled. So once P3 is scheduled at 7 milliseconds, it will run for another 7 milliseconds because its remaining time is 7 milliseconds. So from 7 plus 7, that is still 14 milliseconds, P3 will be running. At 14 milliseconds, P3 is completed. Only P1 is the process in the system. So its execution time is 10 milliseconds. Anyway, irrespective of that, it is the only process in the system. So that will be scheduled. So it will run for 10 milliseconds. So from 14 plus 10, that is till 24 milliseconds, P1 will be running. So at this point, P3 is completed and P1 is scheduled, and it will run till 10 milliseconds. That is the total time will be 24 milliseconds. So this is the way different processes are scheduled using this preemptive shortest job first or shortest remaining time scheduling. Now, based on this, how they are scheduled, you need to draw a execution sequence. The execution sequence is written like this. First, P2 was scheduled. It was running for 2 milliseconds. So from 0 to 2, P2 is running. Next, P4 was scheduled. It was running for another 2 milliseconds. So from 2 to 4, P4 was running. Next, for 3 milliseconds, P2 was running. From 4 to 7, for 3 milliseconds, P2 is running. Next, for 7 milliseconds, P3 is running. So 7 to 14. Last one, from 14 to 24, for 10 milliseconds, P1 was running. So P1 is here. So this is the execution sequence of the different processes with respect to time. We are asked to find the waiting time and turnaround time for each process and the average waiting and turnaround time. So the waiting time for P2. So P2, it came in the queue at 0 milliseconds and it was scheduled at 0 milliseconds, right? So initially it did not have waiting time. As soon as it came in the queue, it was scheduled because it was the shortest job at that instance. But here, when at 2 milliseconds, P4 came in the queue, P2 got preempted, right? And it waited in the queue till P4 got completed. When P4 got completed, P4 completed at 4 milliseconds. So from 2 to 4 milliseconds, P2 was waiting. At 4 milliseconds, P2 was scheduled again. So from 2 to 4 milliseconds, P2 was waiting. So that's why the difference between 2 to 4, that is 4 minus 2. Okay, so initially, as soon as it came in the queue, it was scheduled, right? Then from 2 to 4 milliseconds, it was waiting. So 4 minus 2, that is 0 plus 4 minus 2, that is 2 milliseconds is the waiting time for P2. Now coming to P4, it came in the queue at 2 milliseconds. Now as soon as it came in the queue, because it was the shortest job, it was scheduled instantly. So the waiting time was 0 milliseconds. It did not wait, right? Whereas P3, it came in the queue at 0 milliseconds along with P1, P3. P1, P2, P3 all came together at 0 milliseconds. But P3 was scheduled at 7 milliseconds. So from 0 to 7 milliseconds, it was waiting, right? So waiting time for P3 is 7 milliseconds. And the last executed task was P1. That also came at 0 milliseconds, but it was scheduled at 14 milliseconds. So it waited for 14 milliseconds. So the waiting time is 14. So this is the waiting time of all the processes. Then the average waiting time is the waiting time for all the processes divided by the number of processes. The waiting time for all the processes means the sum of them. 2 plus 0 plus 7 plus 14 divided by 4. And if you find the answer, if you calculate it, it will come to 5.75 milliseconds. Okay, this is the average waiting time of this particular system. Next, you are asked to find the turnaround time. So what do you mean by turnaround time? The turnaround time is the time taken once it enters the queue till it completes. So it is a sum of time spent in ready queue plus the execution time. The time spent in ready queue means the waiting time plus its execution time. So the first executed task was, or the process was P2. So what is the waiting time for P2? The waiting time for P2 was 2 milliseconds. Its execution time was 5 milliseconds. So 2 milliseconds plus 5 milliseconds, that is 7 milliseconds. That is the turnaround time. For P4, waiting time was 0 milliseconds and its execution time was 2 milliseconds. So the sum of that is 2 milliseconds. For P3, the waiting time is 7 milliseconds. Its execution time is 7 milliseconds. Sum is 14 milliseconds. For P1, the waiting time was 14 milliseconds and execution time in the statement, it was given as 10 milliseconds. So if you add them, it is 24 milliseconds. So this is the way you get turnaround time for different processes. You add the waiting time with the completion time or the execution time, you get the turnaround time. Now the average turnaround time is the sum of all the turnaround times divided by number of processes. The sum, 7 plus 2 plus 14 plus 24 divided by 4, and that will come up to 11.75 milliseconds. So this is the way you solve the problems or examples which involves scheduling techniques. So you can be asked to find this waiting time and turnaround time for any given system of processes with different process IDs or different execution times and for different scheduling algorithms used. Okay, so any of the examples might appear in the exam. One example is sure, for example. Okay. So I'll be sharing some of the problems with you. Please solve them and submit them in the Google Classroom.